Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Next Gen Planners podcast with me, Amelia Hamilton, your head of community experience here at Next Gen Planners. And today I am joined by a brilliant guest. She is a psychologist, a family wealth consultant, and an executive coach, and much, much, much more. But I will let her go on and give you all the details about that in just a moment, as I introduce the brilliant Dr. Moira Somers. Welcome to the Next Gen Planners podcast, Moira. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great.
Excellent. That's fantastic to hear. So to kind of give our audience a bit of an insight and discover a bit more about you, could you tell me a bit about what you do on a daily basis? What is a day in the life of Dr. Moira Somers like?
It's hugely varying from day to day and week to week. So when I look at my schedule for today, for example, I am going to be doing a coaching session with somebody who has just sold her business and has decided to gift money to her children, her adult children. She wants to know how to do that in a way that will really benefit them and benefit the family and not court any of the dangers that might be associated with a large gift. And then I'm going to be talking with people who train board members so that we can look at how to bring board expertise into family enterprise governance. And then I'm going to do a coaching session with an emerging leader. A lot of the work that I'm doing now tends to be within the family enterprise space. And then tomorrow I have a full day of training of advisors and doing some in-depth work with private advisory firms who want to get better at the human side of advising. So all in all, it's just a great day. Yesterday I was at the clinic and doing things more along the lines of mental incapacity and mental health issues.
Amazing. So all sorts, a master of many, many, many different spheres and sectors. How, you've obviously got a kind of a clinical background in psychology, and that's where your training is from. How early on in learning about that and developing your skills there, did you realize there was a huge connection between psychology and money and the way that people approach their finances and how their behaviors that they learn and how they've been brought up impact their relationship towards money and their finances?
I think it probably took about 5 minutes. In part, do you know what? In part because as you start working with people, you start recognizing what your own money biases are, your own money story, and how if you don't start dealing with that, it is totally going to get in the way of your effectiveness as a therapist. But other ways in which that connection between money and well-being became evident was certainly in my work in the hospital. We see on a daily basis the links between poverty and ill health. We see on a daily basis that if you have access to some disposable income, you can recover more fully simply because you can get rehabilitation supports, actual physical stuff to assist your rehabilitation, or additional supports in the form of people that allow you to really engage in rehabilitation and not end up as disabled as you might otherwise have. So as I said, Amelia, it became evident really early on that money isn't we're not just spiritual beings that aren't impacted by how money really comes into our lives on a intimate basis every day.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a great point, and it seems so obvious, doesn't it? So why do you think it has taken this, our profession, the financial planning industry, so long to recognize the significance of the psychology behind money and bring these so-called soft skills more to the forefront of the profession?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in part because it messes stuff up, right? It adds complexity to
Mm.
nod in the direction of a fuller reality.
Yeah.
And who wants more complexity? um, so it's really understandable that it's just easier to focus on stuff that can be quantified and can and taught really easily. And in the same way, I'll tell you that medicine has moved in the has erred in the other direction, that they have been really, and especially therapists and psychology, they've been really just wanting to remain unsullied by the topic of money. And so I think what we've needed is to combine into this, combine our strengths into something that really looks at the full catastrophe of being a human being, which is the body, the mind, the money, the meaning. And to do that in a really integrated way is something that the financial services profession is just beginning to get on board with, in part because of the inclusion of younger people who say, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch here that's been neglected. And so it's really encouraging to see what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned at the start that some of your work involves training advisors. Are there particular misconceptions that advisors have when approaching this kind of topic? Are there some lessons that are more necessary than others when you start to train people?
Sure. I would say that one of the wishes that I would grant myself if I were given the magic wand is to get rid of that phrase soft skills, because I think it by definition sounds a little squishy, and it also kind of minimizes its importance. And so I think that if instead of talking about hard and soft, we talk about technical and personal, and realize that some people can't cross domains very well. If you're not good at the personal side of stuff, you should probably stay in the back office and where your skills in analysis and research might shine. And if you're not good at the technical stuff, you should not be giving specific kinds of financial advice that have to do with taxes and accounting and particular investments, because you're likely to mislead people. But there is a wonderful overlap there of people who can and want to go deep into both areas. People who recognize that both the technical and the personal sides are equally important and equally complex, and therefore need training and honing and constant updating of skills and knowledge.
Yeah.
What I will say is that it's the personal side that drives decision making. And so no matter how technically proficient you might be, if you can't tap into what it is that clients really want and what it is, and this is where I really lean into, what it is that clients are capable of doing at any given moment in time, then it doesn't matter how beautiful your plan is. I'm sure you've spoken to many people who've emphasized this, but that's where I sort of live all the time, is how do we align with our clients to figure out what they're capable of doing on their own, what they're able to delegate to us to do from our area of expertise, And where is it that we can come together to be implementation partners so that meaningful changes occur?
Absolutely. And I'm on with you on that side of things. It's really great that these conversations are now becoming more prominent, and the necessity of learning those, yeah, quote unquote soft slash personal. I really like the
Personal
idea of
stuff.
calling it personal skills. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? To say soft skills, it makes them feel less than. It makes them feel, well, they're easy. They're not hard. They're not, anyone can do it. When realistically, you do have to have a certain kind of dispensation to be able to walk into a room, leave your own biases at the door, and be there to listen and actively listen to the person in front of you in order to help them in the best way. And I feel like I could talk about all of those things for the rest of the podcast. However, we are here today to talk about another incredibly interesting, almost subtopic in this whole discussion of financial psychology, and that is sludge. But before we get to sludge itself, I think it's perhaps useful to look at its predecessor, nudge. So to start things off, could you give our audience an overview of what the concept of nudge is?
Sure. So this, one of the ways in which psychology has kind of made its way into the world of economics and the faculties at universities has been through looking at how people go about making decisions. And they've coined the term, behavioral economists have coined the term bounded rationality to talk about the fact that we just have limitations on the number of inputs we can manage in order to make optimal decisions. And so we start making sort of mental shortcuts or figuring out what we're going to pay attention to, which by definition means that there's some things we won't pay attention to. Over time, what was realized is that sometimes those biases or those limitations cause us to make non-optimal decisions. And so incredible efforts have been made to figure out how do we assist in decision-making. And so I'm going to ask listeners to imagine, as we move into this discussion, imagine a 2x2 matrix. And on the sort of the left-hand side, we're going to be looking at things that help consumers or harm consumers. And over the top, we're going to imagine we've got labels, things that facilitate decision-making or impede decision-making. So nudges fall into that upper left category of things that are specifically designed to help consumers make better decisions for their lives. And so these are things, nudges are generally things that we think about as helping us make optimal decisions without removing choice for making non-optimal decisions. So for example, within the field of financial services, most people on the call will be members of firms where people sign a form that says the firm can take monthly contributions every month from now until kingdom come, or until told differently, that will go into their investment account. So that instead of saving money being this thing that you have to consciously think about every month and transfer money over